the Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast.
Howdy, this is Graham Malin, Season Ticket Advisory Board and founding member of Dallas Opulence Society, aka DOS, FC Dallas's most exclusive supporters group. Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90. Shop Soccer90.com for all your FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club jerseys, tees, and scarves. Beginning today, all FC Dallas jerseys are eligible for the Third Degree podcast listener discount. So when checking out on Soccer90.com, be sure to use the promo code Third Degree, and you will receive 20% off your entire order. Soccer90. Live it, love it, wear it.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast, number
165.
165. Hi, my name is Peter. How you doing? As always, here via the miracle of the internet. First, the amazing Dan Crooke. Dan, how are you doing after your country got walloped by Shibboleth Shun?
Well, that sounds like an innuendo in itself, but I don't know. It's not a World Cup. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, who gives a shit? And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, live from the most beautiful part of the country, the Pacific Northwest. Editor, founder of thirddegree.net, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. Calling in today from Spokane Valley, Washington, to be specific.
My only big... how would I want to say this? The one thing that pleases me most that this is just an audio format podcast and not a visual is you won't be rubbing in those amazing photos of where you're hanging out.
Yeah,
in my face.
It's pretty nice being up here on the lake where the high yesterday on the water was about 65. So y'all enjoy the weather back home. It's been It's been nice to get away to some solitude, while still keeping in touch with FC Dallas a little bit.
Are they crop dusting by your cabin?
No, they're not. Thankfully, there is some of that nearby though. It's just not near where I am.
I know you do this on a pretty regular basis, and I'm sure every time you pack up the truck and you turn around to leave, and you must have all sorts of regret and second thoughts, maybe I should just stay here full time kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the one thing to think about as you're driving away that'll make you feel better. At least you won't be there when the super volcano goes off and kills everybody instantly.
Yeah, the Yosemite super volcano.
Yeah.
Yellowstone,
exactly.
The Yellowstone one. Yeah, sorry, not Yosemite.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's funny, Peter, the thing that always makes me turn around and go back is actually, and this, not to sound like a total dork, it's actually this soccer stuff. It's like, this is what I feel. It's what makes me come back,
You're such a suck up.
I know, but it's like, it's not, like, think about it, like, my wife and I would be perfectly happy to live here. Her family's from here. My
no
job
soccer games to go to.
Yeah, my job is whatever, right? I mean, career is a career. You get another job. There's still TV up here. But like my FC Dallas calling, I don't know, is what brings you back.
Yeah. No, you'd get so desperate, you'd start writing game reports of like YMCA games filled with Indians and small town people, kids, and stuff like that. It'd be awesome.
There's actually a USL1 ownership group here that's putting a stadium together with the local township to play in USL1. So you never know.
Really?
Yeah, and a women's what's it, Dan? What's the other women's league? Not the number one, the number two, the WPSL.
WPSL.
Yeah, and that also it's going to be sort of a mixed use facility. I read in the news. I don't know squat about it. I just read the newspaper here, online.
And it will end up with better branding than North Texas.
Yeah, probably, probably so. Not hard to do that. Yeah.
Well, Buzz, we look forward to your return and glad that FC Dallas calls and makes you long for Frisco, Texas, instead of beautiful 65-degree weather in the mountains of the Pacific Northwest.
Well, there were 2 weekends off, so it made a good chance to get away for 3 weeks. So.
It did. So this is going to make for an interesting podcast since we don't have any games to talk about. But, I think what we were going to try to do is just kind of take a pause and big picture it over the course of the season. But before we get into that, while we don't have FC Dallas games, we're still getting to check out some FC Dallas players, specifically Jesus Ferreira, who has been starting in the last two friendlies, which in many ways were actually more important than the two Nation League games that are coming up this week or in the next few days. And it's been fun and interesting and a bit maddening to watch both the professional and the layman's reaction to Jesus's performances against in the 2 games that he played in. And Buzz, I think you said you watched the Uruguay game.
I did. Yep.
Yeah. And that's interesting because he had a couple of really good opportunities. Is that the game he had the 2 good semi-good opportunities that people are conflicted about?
Well, I certainly remember there being a couple of good opportunities for him. I'm not seeing the other one. I couldn't tell you how it compared, but he had his moments in that game for sure.
So let's talk about what is it he is doing well for Berhalter. And I mean, obviously, finishing aside, I'm not convinced that all of those opportunities are as easy peasy lemon squeezy as some people want them to be. I don't know what the XG ratings were for any of those opportunities, but let's talk about what you see him doing well that maybe you don't see somebody like Haji Wright doing.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, when most people review a striker, and this is perfectly valid, of course, he didn't score. So that's a problem. But right now, no one's scoring from that position for the national team. So you have to look at other factors. No one on this team, in terms of the U.S. national team, no one is Lewandowski, right? We don't have, for the United States, a striker that good. Not now, we don't. So you have to look at the things that they're doing other than scoring, since none of them are really scoring. And you compare him to Pepe, you compare him to Wright, and you look at what he's doing. And what he's doing is the same thing he's doing for FC Dallas. It's the same system, same style of play. So you have to remember that when you step up to the national team, what changes is the amount of time you have, the amount of space you have, how tight and clean your touch has to be. Jesus is pretty good at that. He's got a pretty good clean touch. He's pretty good at shooting quickly, not taking too long when he gets opportunities. He's really good with his off-ball movement to create space. Just like you watch play with FC Dallas, you watch Areola, you watch Velasco exploit the space created by Jesus' movement. He's quick enough that he also takes advantage of the space himself that he creates with his movement. He's pulling center box out of position. The very essence of what we generally call a false nine striker. What the coaches like to call a build striker, or whatever, the line breaking and the coming back to midfield and combining and getting the team forward. So he's still doing all those things. It's just that the time and the space are diminished, and it's much, much harder. And you can look at Areola comparatively and how he looks. Again, the time and space is diminished. It's harder, so it's a more difficult level of play. These guys aren't quite used to it. But you have to like his ability to get other guys involved, because the men's national team, let's be honest, is built around Pulisic and whatever wing is on the other side, whether it's going to be Gio Reyna or whether it's going to be Weah. That's the way the team is constructed. It's constructed for McKinney to exploit those spaces, as he's really gifted at doing. Whoever it's going to, like Aronson sometimes is in there in those positions, exploiting those holes and gaps that are created. So you have to look into the idea of which of these strikers, none of whom are scoring, most elevates the guys around him. And that answer might be Jesus. I thought his touch looked really good. I thought his combination play looked really good. And those are the aspects of play that he's going to need. He has the ability to go at a guy and beat a guy and then make a pass and make a move and make a shot. He doesn't have to have somebody else create a shot. He can create a shot himself. So all that is really positive, Is it going to mean he's going to be the choice? Who knows? I mean, only Berhalter's going to know that, So as long as Jesus continues to be hot in Major League Soccer, I think he'll be in the conversation for that spot. And if he manages to make the team, then we'll have to look at things like matchups, because I think that'll be very telling, like who they're playing might dictate what kind of striker you might want. And there's room for 2 or 3 maybe in the team. So it'll be interesting to see who gets those chances, and it might be Jesus. We'll see.
Yeah, as related to Dallas, it was nice to see Paul get some time. I feel bad for him because I think he unfairly gets crapped on by soccer Twitter just because he plays in MLS and not in Europe. If he was playing on a Liga MX team, I think his reception would be completely different. He could be exactly the same player, but if he was playing in Mexico, people would treat him differently, at least those who treat him negatively now. And it was nice to see Weston play, although he looks a bit, for all the obvious reasons, a bit of a fraction of himself. But the one player that really I thought caught my eye, because I'm not watching him play week in and week out, was Reggie Cannon. Now, Buzz, I don't think you saw the Morocco game. Dan,
No.
Did you happen to watch it by chance?
I did not, no.
All right. There were several, so in the Morocco game, Berhalter was doing something interesting tactically where he was letting Jedi run up the left when they had the ball. And when he did that, he was shifting to a three-man back line, which meant Reggie was having to play right center back, which I guess he's been playing for Boa Vista quite regularly this year. And I gotta give Reggie some credit because ball skill, in my mind, my recollection, was not always one of his better assets. I'm not saying he didn't have it, but I saw him with some ball skill and move in this game and off the ball movement that I had not seen out of him before. He looked a higher level player in that game against Morocco than I remembered him in his time here in Dallas, and I really appreciated the growth. And if you haven't seen it, Buzz or Dan, you might want to go back and spend some time watching it. It's pretty interesting, frankly.
Well, Berhalter specifically talked about that ability to play in the three-man back line as being really important. And if you remember, we've talked about this with Reggie before. Dallas recruits players who are everyone else's like number 10 or their best player. Reggie was a 10 for a team when Dallas recruited him. So he does have some passing on ball ability in there in his game. So like his ability to play as that third center back, Berhalter specifically talked about the flex nature of his team. This is something we've talked about for a long time. You remember Adams used to do this. Is he right back? Is he a 6 kind of flip-flopping thing? And you've seen the way with FC Dallas teams who play the same system, when they have a guy go forward, the other back stays, and they become a three-man back line. That happens all the time. So Reggie's ability to play that position is going to give him some versatility and be able to be that third center back when that team flexes forward from Jedi, as we call him, on the other side. That's a positive for Reggie in terms of making the team. I did a burn the other day about this. When you're building a roster for a national team, it's not an all-star team. Yes, you have a way you want to play, and yes, you probably have your idea about what your first 11 is. But then you also look at things like, what do I do if I need to change formations, if I want to switch tactics, if I have to do a different thing? Do I have the guys that can fill these other roles? And Reggie's ability to play in a three-man back line that way, or play as a wing back, or play as a stay-at-home defender, or play as a get-forward defender, all that versatility will give him a leg up against a guy, let's just say arbitrarily, Yedlin, who's a very one-dimensional attacking, flying outside back, and that's it. So when you build your roster, which one of those guys might you want might depend a lot on who you're drawn against, who you think you might play. And the great example of this I always use is when Bruce Arena played a 3-5-2 against Mexico and put Claudio Reyna, I think it was, at right wing back, and shocked Mexico and totally caught him off balance and ended up winning 2-0 because he had the versatility to change formations. So Berhalter's going to be one to be thinking about that, and Reggie will be able to bring some of that. And we've even seen Reggie play as a 6 in a pinch back in his time in Dallas, mostly in training or with other teams and not in an MLS game. But those versatilities really will help you get into a team, your ability to play multiple positions like that.
All right. Well, the U.S. plays Grenada down in Austin. Is it tomorrow or Saturday? I don't know what the schedule is.
I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah, it's coming up here pretty quickly. And that is it. I was talking about this on the kick around. I'm going to ask you guys this question, and if you already know the answer, fess up. But so they're playing these 2 group games for the Nations League between first Grenada and then El Salvador, the 2 other teams that are in their group. It's a 3-team group, round robin.
Right.
So they're playing their first game. Now, do you know when they will play the next group game?
Boy, isn't it like September or something like that? Or
Dan, do you know?
No, but I'm guessing November.
March of 2023.
Wow.
Yes. Stupid Nations League tournament. Next set of games for the same group is almost just under a year from now. Is that not crazy and ridiculous and stupid?
You might not even have the same coach.
Yeah, I know. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I don't understand it, and it just shows how broken all this is. And again, a lot of it is because of the stupid Winter World Cup.
I did see that the schedule was weird enough that Mexico will play their first game against Jamaica, who will be playing their third game.
Yeah, I think Jamaica played yesterday. I think I saw somewhere. John Arnold was. Yeah,
they played a back-to-back with Suriname.
Yeah, it's so all made up on the fly and wonky and Very CONCACAF-y. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
Well,
it's very
just
CONCACAF-y.
remember that those stupid Nation Leagues games really exist more for not USA and Mexico. They're to give meaningful games to everybody else. So I think we almost do it just to kind of as a charity almost in a way, if you will. But yeah. Plus, I mean, basically for Bear Halter at this point, it's going to be like second and third tier guys. I mean, I can't imagine that your first tier guys will play in that game.
No, and I do wonder, I was thinking about this, would if you gave it up to Berhalter to choose, would he rather have played this schedule, which allows him to try out different people in a lesser meaningless, the Nations League situation, or would he have rather tried to screw together 4 top-level other World Cup participants and stressed his depth, because obviously he can't ask Tyler Adams and Yunus Musa to play 4 straight games, that kind of thing. I don't know which one he would have picked.
Well, I think there'll be a chance to get more friendlies later on, or will there not? I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
I think pretty much, and Dan, you can help me out here. I think most countries at this point only have 5 or 6 games scheduled between now and November.
Yeah, I don't know what the calendar even looks like this year.
I'm pretty sure. I know the U.S. only has like 6 games total, and I think I heard somebody say the other day that, like, for example, England only has 5 or 6 games between now and November.
Yeah, that seems about right, because you got league play. You don't really have a choice. It's like usually you might have a month off at the end of the season. You could get a few in, but yeah, they're kind of stuck. You got to hope that everyone's just going to be in peak league form, I guess.
I suppose, yeah. It's the World Cup this year poses a whole lot of new and interesting questions to keep an eye on. We'll talk more about that. All right, let's move into where we're at with ye old FC Dallas and kind of a midpoint review of how we're feeling about their situation. And are we technically at a midpoint? Dan, where are we? Are we a little early for mid part of the season? Is that where we're at?
We're a bit before, yeah.
Say that again?
Over a third of the way through.
A little over the... Okay.
Yeah, they played 14 games out of 34, so it's not halfway, but it's not a third quite either. So,
all right, so here we are. We're just before halfway. Let's just call it that. I think it's pretty safe to say that when we look at just the Western Conference standings and see that FC Dallas is in second place with 25 points behind LAFC, which are 4 points ahead, and then maybe even more interestingly, that they're third in the Supporter Shield standings. LAFC, again, is on top. The only team in between them and LA is New York at 26 points and have played 1 game less. I think it's, at least in my opinion, even though I'm the guy on the podcast that predicted the highest finish of everybody in 4th place, I got to say, man, I think so far all expectations have been exceeded to date.
Yeah, this club changed so many things this winter, and a lot of them we didn't even realize were happening until the season really was getting underway. They went out and went after players and and turned this thing around really quickly. Now, the caveat to that, of course, is that when you've only played 14 games, you're also 2 wins ahead of 11th place. So a real quick flame out will end this whole thing. But in the meantime, you have to like all the foundational stuff you're seeing happen. The defense with a change at left back, a change at goal, Hedges returning to health. The defense has gone from worst in the West to best in the West, over the course of this. 13 goals allowed. That's 3 goals better than anybody else in the Western Conference. That's phenomenal turnaround. That's phenomenal defensive performance. And then you include that in the offense, which is, while last year the offense wasn't horrible, it was middle of the pack. And they're now, I think they're I think they're in 4th place in the West in terms of goals scored, and while there's some 24 goals is pretty good, and there's some good balance. Jesus and Areola are both scoring really well. Like that, a balance across the front line is what we expected, or what I expected anyway. The volume of goals is much higher than we would have thought. There is one red flag about the offense that I'm a little concerned about, big picture, but overall, it's a remarkable turnaround. And it's part of it is the coaching, part of it is the club's willingness to go out and spend both cash and fake cash and be aggressive in the market. And pretty much any move they've made, I can't other than one draft pick, I think every move they've made is planned out. And that's what we've always said, criticized them for, was that their hit rate has never been that high. Well, their hit rate this year is really high. So you have to be ecstatic, I think, about what you're seeing happen. I mean, all signs are really good, except for the one that we'll talk about in a minute.
All right, now Buzz, sit tight, because I'm going to put Dan on the spot. Dan, are you ready for this?
No.
You're a podcaster's dream, Dan.
Thanks.
What's the one element of this season that you're most pleased by? Go.
Consistency. Consistency in the team, consistency of performances. Last year, it felt like you didn't know what the midfield would be like one week to the next. This year, it's even if the players change, the performance doesn't necessarily drop off. The style doesn't change.
Consistency?
No. Damn it! This is an edit.
The cone of silence?
The cone of silence doesn't drop off. No, it's they'd have to change us. Nothing really changes because Siki comes in for Brandon or for, or something like that. Whereas last year you were dealing with like Brian Acosta comes in, Brian Acosta goes away. Who's gonna fill in? How do you have to play to kind of deal around that disparity there? That word is eventually going to come to me about 3 hours after we finish.
It's not consistency?
It's not consistency.
What? Okay. But it starts with "con"?
Yeah.
And it's not a foul 4-letter word?
It should be by now.
That the English love?
I do have a particular affection for that word, yes.
I'm sure. I know you do. I've heard you say it more than pretty much any other word I've ever heard you utter.
That's a complete load of bollocks. Yeah, maybe not, I don't know.
What's your middle name?
No, let's say consistency. The consistency has been phenomenal. Right. No drop-offs from going home to road, no anything. It's just been... This team has actually been this team without this desperate attempt to define its style that we've seen in the past few years.
Okay, I think that's a great answer, and I agree with you, and I hadn't even thought of it in that way. But that is true. That is one of the real treats so far, is that we don't get these weird... and it's not fair to pin this just on Lucci, because I felt like we kind of got it with Oscar too, where you just never know what you were going to get from game in to game out. With Nico, we're getting a very consistent set of performances. I think that's a fair way of saying it, isn't it, Buzz?
Yeah, I think so. There's I want to call it professionalism, but the problem with that is that the previous coaches and coaching staffs were certainly professional, but it's more about a mentality that they've managed to drill down into the team that makes them very workmanlike and businesslike. They don't get excited. They don't get turned up, positive or negative. They just, every time they show up and they deliver this very, not to use this, I feel like this is the beginning of the year where we're going to use the word consistent a million times like they did. It was a process.
I'm being told in the chat the word is compromise.
Compromise.
It was compromise, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that fits into your review, but whatever.
You weren't compromising your style for a different player coming into the lineup.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That does make sense. All right.
Yeah, there's a methodology happening where there's like parts are interchangeable and everyone has clearly defined roles, which players like to know their roles and what they're defined to do, and so they're easily able to switch in and out. And that comfort level that I think the players all have because of this, we talked about it a lot at the beginning of the year from the way training was different. I think the comfort level lets them easily do these tactical switches we're now seeing where they're switching in and out of style and formation during different phases of the game. And that's a really exciting high-level tactic. A lot of teams can't do that. It takes soccer intelligence, and this coach seems to really put a lot of emphasis on that, which is nice. Certainly the way the FC Dallas Academy develops players, they develop that soccer intelligence. That's one of the things they really look for. They put a lot of emphasis on, game reading and adaptation as part of their program. And it comes through, and I think a lot of their homegrowns. You can look at any of the FC Dallas homegrowns. I think they all have that quality about them. So it now permeates the whole team, and I think it shows up. And it's why you get this ability to not lose the mentality when you go from different venues or different locations or different opponents. It's really exciting.
We when you told me what you wanted to do on the pod at kind of last minute notice, and we didn't have any games to talk about, I was trying to figure out how the best way to do this, and I know we could Buzz, break it down by kind of department, but what I wanted to focus on, because I think for me it's been the number of pleasant surprises that this season so far has presented us. And so, for example, the first pleasant surprise, as best I can recall, is Marco Farfan. I mean, I feel like I was like jumping up and down like a kid in a candy store over how good he was and what a good trade that turned out to be. And maybe even it turned out to be equally good for Ryan to get to go back to LA as well. But then it kind of shifted into, man, look how good Brandon Cervania is playing and Edwin Cerrillo is playing, and they're really actually kind of keeping everybody's. They were playing so well that we're not having to pay attention just to Paxton. And then it turned to the goalkeeper, Paz. Like, oh my gosh, this guy's actually, once he actually has to do something, he can actually do it. And then Jesus kind of came into it, and then it was the Paul Areola experience that we've enjoyed for the last several weeks. And I don't know, Buzz, is there one element out of all of that you feel like is maybe the best surprise of the season so far?
Best surprise.
I mean, is that okay? Is that all right? Do you guys understand? Yeah. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
I think I'm not going to claim it's a surprise, but I think the most pleasing aspect of all of those that you mentioned for me is actually Paxton Pomykal, because I was really, really worried that moving him back into the middle was going to be a problem, that he was going to take too much of a beating. And combined with that, the fact that there's no real backup for him. Thomas has come back, and Thomas is at this point the backup for him, but he's yet to use Thomas really in that capacity. So as much as we think that there's going to develop a guy who can replace Paxton in some games, there hasn't been. And Paxton's had to play a really, really heavy load. And so far, for me, he's playing fantastically, and he's not suffering. I mean, we'll see. Like, he came off last game, right? So that pleasant surprise of Paxton returning to his game of 2 years ago, and as the season went on, he got better and better and better. So I guess it's maybe that's a surprise, or maybe I don't think it'd be fair to him to say it that way because he played that way before. So I guess that's the thing I'm happiest about is his revival and the fact people are talking about him now with the national team again. I think he's got to do a couple of things to get back in that picture for serious, but the way he's playing for Dallas, the way he's playing at an MVP level for Dallas, I think is of the things that are not surprising, but perhaps we weren't guaranteed to happen. That I was certainly worried and questioning. That's the one I'm most happy about seeing come to fruition.
Dan, do you? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dan.
I was going to say, it's definitely fair to say that that's a pleasant surprise. We've talked a lot about his recovery from his surgery, and this is year 2. He's a year ahead of where he's supposed to be.
So, Dan, if you were to look at it kind of on the flips, or not, this isn't a negative by any means, but, we always want to have our back covered. What, at this point of the season, sitting in second place in the West, do you feel like is the team's biggest exposure at this point of potential exposure, or its Achilles heel?
Any injury to Matt Hedges.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine is slightly different. Oh, you want to talk about Hedges first?
Well, yeah, Dan, talk about that a little bit, please.
Oh, we saw the game he had out when his kid was born, and the defense wasn't pretty. We've seen Martinez play well. Tafare was phenomenal last year. And for whatever reason, you take Matt out of that lineup, suddenly Emma Tumasi doesn't look as assured on the right. No one's quite cheating out wide to help cover the half spaces for him. Your communication lacks at the back. Suddenly your organisation at set pieces goes away. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, he earns that captain's armband. He may not be the loudest leader, but the things he does in that team and the confidence he gives that back line, just you can't replace it.
I think you could look at last year when he was playing. We found out later, playing through a lot of discomfort and pain over the last
broken hip.
Yeah, that even when he was still in there, he wasn't his same self, and the whole thing just really suffered last year. You know, when you talk about what happened last season, why was the defense so horrible? It really just comes down to that. You know, when not having that a defender of the year, the Dallas' best defensive player of all time by far. Not having that guy be 100% is a big problem. So yeah, Dan's right. If he all of a sudden is old or all of a sudden is hurt, it's all going to go to pieces because the other guys are not ready to be that guy yet and hold it all together.
So, Buzz, do you have what's your exposure point? I
do. Yeah, I have one.
Soft spot on the top of the head of this little baby.
Yeah, it's reliance on scoring efficiency. We've talked a lot this year about the quality of shots that have been coming in the box. The number that are in the box instead of outside the box has been really good. We've talked a lot about from game after game after game. We talk about this. The volume of shots is not high, but the number on target relative to the number of shots has been really, really good. And also the number of goals to the numbers of shots on target has been really, really good. So that's three things in a row that are going really, really well. Now, it's very possible that those things are all going really, really well because this is a very good team and they can continue. But if Jesus goes cold, all of a sudden those particular stats are going to fall off fast. And there's not really another guy that you can rely on in terms of like complete game. Like Franco Harder can come in and do it for 20 to 30 minutes, but he can't do it for start a whole bunch of games. So if Jesus were to get hurt, or if he were to go cold, or if for whatever reason he would lose his mojo, that's going to be a problem because the whole thing is reliant on that efficiency. There were one or two games where they didn't have it, and all of a sudden the offense was like, oh my gosh, but then it came back. So I'm hoping that there's coaching that is leading to this, that it's not just an accident, that something that they're doing has led the team to have this efficiency in the final third because it's really good. But, in the past, this team has not been really good in that particular area and that efficiency in the final third. So the fact that there's a history of it is why I'm a little bit worried about it. Only in the sense of I'm not actually worried about it like I think it's possible I am worried about it and that it's possible it could happen. I am not worried about it in its likelihood, only that it's going to be a big problem if it goes south.
Okay, I love that answer, and I agree with you, and I agreed with Dan, but I'm going to come up with a third and different one, which is the clear refusal to wear the white road shorts with the red home jerseys. That's my biggest concern right now because I'm really pissed off about that. Yeah. No, you know what mine is? My biggest concern is getting one Alan Velasco moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think, and again, this one is going to be tied to whatever your expectations or hope for in terms of how the season plays out. If you're hoping this team has a real shot at competing for some sort of silverware, I think he's critical because this team needs game changers, those special players in special moments. And I feel like they've maybe got that a little bit in Areola, and Jesus has those moments in it. But Velasco clearly is the guy for all the money and hype and all of that I think needs to deliver that, yes, even in season one with him here. And I'm hoping that all of our silly speculation about him jaunting off in classic Dallas style and disappearing into the night never to come back. Now that we know that he went to Argentina, gathered his family, and brought them back to Frisco, that things turn around and they actually get him rolling here quickly.
Yeah, credit to the club, by the way, for facilitating his family coming and visiting. That's awesome. That's an excellent point, Peter. And we've talked for years about how we felt this team wasn't ready to compete for an MLS Cup because it doesn't have those kinds of difference makers. And I think you're for sure right that Paul Arriola can be put in that group. The way Jesus and Paxton are playing, I think you can also put them in that group. We've talked for years about, could you develop those guys to be DPs and be defensive difference makers? And I think that's happening. But you're 100% correct that the reason why you continue to play Alan Velasco, even when he does make mistakes, is because of this upside. He's so young, and yet he has the ability to have these magic moments. You're willing to put up with moments of brain farting, because the idea is that he is a guy who could, in a time of real pressure, in a time of real competition at the highest levels of this league, he might be a guy who can make a moment of individual brilliance that you need in order to advance in the playoffs in this league and win an MLS Cup. So that while the team won't be bad if he doesn't do that, the ability for this team to be really, really good is going to hinge on his growth and the continued growth of Arriola's too old to grow that way. But Jesus and Paxton will continue to grow. Velasco will continue to grow. And those four guys collectively and their progression in that way, as you so clearly stated, are what's going to let this team have, hopefully, the ability over this season or next season or maybe the one after to make that leap and actually compete for a cup.
Okay. Dan, you got any additional insight into that particular topic you'd like to mention, sir?
While you two were talking, I was looking at what Buzz was talking about, the efficiency up front. And I remember Buzz had put this whole year-on-year thing together about how many, or for each player about how many shots they have per goal. And FC Dallas as a whole, on average, is like 10 shots a goal. This year, they're sitting at 6.9. So, it's a real delicate thing. Yeah. 3 more shots a goal, they're not, they're not producing that higher volume. Suddenly, 2 goals per game goes down to 1 very easily. And if you're only conceding 1 a game, then you go from winning 2-1 to tying.
Yeah, there have been times in this team's history, and I don't have the document up in front of me, but there's been times in this team's history where it's like 12, 13, 15 shots per goal. You want to be under 10 for sure. And to be, from my memory, I'm going to say being around 6 is going to be one of the lowest this club's ever had, if not the lowest the club's ever had. So that's what I mean about that efficiency.
For context, the double winning season was 9.14.
Wow.
So
wow.
6 is fantastic.
Yeah, and that's something I left out when talking about the surprises, because I think you could make the argument. The reality is the biggest surprise to this season is just how dramatically better the defense has gotten from last season, which was utter trash.
Yeah, there's no question. As you pointed out, Peter, the Farfan trade at the beginning of the year, look, we love Ryan Hollingshead, but in terms of solidifying your defense, Marco Farfan is a defensive first outside back. So was Johnny Nelson, but you couldn't predict what was going to happen with Johnny's back, and so you couldn't risk that as an organization. I understand that. Marco Farfan is an up-and-coming player, still pretty young, and he's shown ability to progress his offensive game a little bit, but it's a defensive game. And then you combine that with Martinez's form improving, probably related to playing under a coach who understands the culture and the system, being the Spanish and all that. Combine that with Matt Hedges returning to health. Combine that with Tuamasi improving, maybe from the pressure of Nanu, maybe just from another year playing the spot. And you combine that with Paz coming in goal and being a spectacular goalie. And then you combine it with the progression of Edwin Cerrillo as a 6, or Facundo, who has, because Edwin beat him out so cleanly, raised his game. And Facundo's brought something to the team that he wasn't bringing last year. And both of those, all that combined together is such a huge swing. And you've seen this team go from the worst team in the league to the best team in the league in terms of its defense. And it's remarkable. And that defensive foundation, what's the cliche, right? Defensive wins championships. It's a cliche, but that defensive foundation allows you the freedom to be special on the front end and to do things and to be mobile and to try these different formational switches and these different tactic switches and keep teams off balance and be able to be efficient on the front end and not have to have crazy volumes of shots, because you can control the game and you can dictate the game and you can stifle the game and stop the other team from getting. I mean, the massively small amount of shots that the other team gets against FC Dallas is just mind-boggling. How few shots Paz has to face, except for those 2 games where he had like 65 and he stood on his head and it was like, and he won them games. And when it's like, that's exactly what you want, right? From a goalie.
Yeah, but remember, there was a part of the season where we were like several games into the season, and we kind of looked at each other and go, "I don't know how if he's any good because he's not having to save anything."
Yeah,
so,
at one point he'd like through 5 games he'd faced 6 shots, and
Yeah,
only
it
one
was
of them
the-
was any good.
it was the Portland game. He made that big save in the second half when Portland put on all their good players, and he made a really big save to keep it like a 3-goal lead or whatever it was, and that's when you're like, "Oh, okay, he's got something."
Well, people might think like one save doesn't really matter, but think about that in a context. If all of a sudden he finally faces a really difficult shot and he doesn't get it, then there's a whole big letdown of like, oh man. But then he makes that save and it's like, yeah, we're great, and the whole team is lifted and the whole team's vibe carries forward. Little moments like that can make or break a whole season when you have a guy you don't know about who all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're good there,
Yeah, all of that is great, and I feel bad that I didn't start with the defense because in my mind, now that I think about it in real time, that may be the best part of the story of this season is just how ridiculously better and improved the defense is, and the reason why I think that's important is, and Dan, you could probably list this off way better than I can. You can go through the last multiple years, at least in recent times, of clubs that had terrible defensive issues, got the right people in to fix them, and went on to win a lot of silverware. Liverpool, like me, be the best example of that. And that maybe, I know everybody may go, you can't really compare those two things, but it just drives home the point that getting your defense shit right, squared away, is critical to being able to do anything else on the field.
I mean, how many championships in the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s did Arsenal win just on boring Arsenal 1-0?
Yeah.
The worry of the defense, of course, it's in Major League Soccer. So this is true of everybody. It's how thin it is because there's no real option to replace Farfan. If Hedges is out, we've talked about what problem that is. We like Tafare, but like past him at center back, what do you have? Quinones has got a little bit something, but he's not there yet. Has Nanu done enough at right back to make us think that like he's a solution? I mean, he's okay, but right now for me, Tuamasi's better. If Paz gets hurt, Jimmy has not really rebounded as much as in the past. We've really liked what he's done, and he's obviously a real competitor. But there's definitely at this point a little bit of a drop off. So, but that's probably true of every position on the field, honestly, except for maybe wing. Oddly, it was so weird.
Yeah, that is weird.
Obrion's got 4 assists. I mean, that's like the most on the team, and he's not even a starter, really. It's crazy. Yeah.
It is. Well, it is in the fact that you're trying to cover 2 positions with just 3 people. Like they don't really have a 4th winger that you can go, okay, that guy's going to get it. No. Now the other, and so you've kind of talked about the back, and so where we're in the area of, well, let's look at what maybe is potentially the issue or potential issues in the middle of the field. Thomas is here, but we don't know what Thomas is going to be able to bring. And Zeki Sebling has been a very nice surprise. I still don't know how much you can really depend on him to be like a consistent starter. And then obviously the Cirio Faku situation is one we've talked about a lot. But if you do have questions, and Buzz, you've mentioned this a lot, it is what's the real story if Jesus was to get hurt let me knock on some wood there. Or if, and with Hara's situation, they don't really have that backup at the number 9 position.
Yeah, there are a couple of spots that, going into the next transfer window, you'd like to see perhaps targeted. A third guy at the 9, a guy who could start a game or two would be nice. Listen, Benny Regic has shown some progression, but he's nowhere near ready in my mind to start a game. And Franco Hara, we know, can't really – you can use him in a game or two as a starter, but if he had to start like the whole back end of his season, then you're in big trouble. Paxton, we really don't want to see him start every single game the whole year. Someone has got to be able to start in midfield. And so far, they seem reluctant to start Cervania and Sebling together. So for whatever reason. So that's
hard
something.
To say.
Yeah, hard to say because I don't really know why it hasn't happened. It is hard to say. Siki. So there is a little bit of a wonder there. I mean, obviously we're hoping, probably everybody's hoping that Thomas is going to show what they're looking for. Thomas looks really good in training. There are moments where he's just looks spectacular. They talk about, every coach that ever has him talks about the defensive side. I think what they're really talking about is just a little bit of focus where he just switches off for a second and all of a sudden his guy is like 5 yards past him. It's not that he doesn't press, because he does. It's just that little bit of like, I don't know how we even call that experience, really, of like top in like 90-minute intensity maybe. So I'm hoping we're going to get to see him at least some soon, because otherwise why'd they bother bringing him back? They definitely got to figure out what they're going to do with him, because if he doesn't find his way into the team over the back half of this year, I'm not sure how much longer he'll be with this team. At that point, they probably try and move him because they can't figure out how to get him to contribute. And I think the world of the kid. I think he's got so much ability. He's a unique passer. He's one of the best ball handlers they've ever had. They got to find a way. But, there's no 10 anymore. So it's like you got to find a way to be able to play. Because look how Paxton plays. The complete box-to-box thing where Paxton's defensive numbers are unbelievable. That's what they got to get Thomas to do, or it's not going to happen for him here.
All right, so I don't want to get into this too much, but do you have a sense that the fact that we haven't seen Thomas yet is indicative of the coach's happiness with what he's seen so far, or is it just the normal course of when he arrived versus getting used to playing with everybody here? I mean, that he's on kind of a normal course and that we will get to him, or do you think there's a larger issue at hand?
It's mostly the latter. It's mostly coming in mid-season and trying to pick up the system and trying to understand the way Paxton plays. But there definitely is a component related to like he's not quite doing what they want yet. Matter of fact, I would assume that like this window here, this basically probably, it's not going to be a full 3 weeks. It'll be more like 2.5 weeks. Will be a really good opportunity for them to drill hard on him into what they're trying to do. So hopefully we'll see him a little some on the back end. You'd like to see him start checking into games kind of like Siki does, where he's coming in like the last 10, 15. I wouldn't do both of them at the same time, but if you can get him in for Paxton late in some games, that'd be really great.
All right. Let's see. So, Dan, do you got anything else about this season you'd like to comment on? You're a big part of the pod's coming up here next.
The marketing's been nice, hasn't it?
It has been nice, yeah. I thought, Buzz, your comment today when was it the actual club that tweeted out the question of who the most important addition has been? And
it was,
your reply was the fucking butt bass, which was the new marketing guy.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, when you put that name there, I went, well, who does he play for? And I had to like, oh, wait, no. And then I saw, oh, no, it's him. Yeah. It's the new VP of marketing. And I went, oh, yeah, Buzz is so damn smart. Top level.
I wonder how many people had to Google that name to figure out who the hell I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, it was such a smart. One, it's dead on 100% correct, and two, it was a funny reply, and that's why you're the king. That's all I got to say about that.
Well, thank you. I mean, you could come up with so many different people associated with FC Dallas that have been great acquisitions. But like that one, to me, like the whole idea that the club has turned this corner, we've talked about it a bunch. There's this new direction happening. There's a new spin happening. That kind of hire isn't even just like a one season kind of hire. That's a big, massive, long-term health of the franchise hire. And the signs are all really fantastic. So like, it was admittedly a little bit tongue in cheek, but also I thought really on point, because it was the most indicative move in terms of the corner this franchise has turned, in my mind, in terms of across the board change and positive movement, and the impact is clearly happening in the stands, relatively speaking. I mean, it ain't 40,000, but it's a good 3,000 to 5,000 better per game already. Yeah. It's noticeable already in the stands, around the team, in the town, in the billboards, in the marketing, everything, and it's all related to that being the new hire. So that's why for me it was the big answer to that question.
All right, so Dallas plays again, not till the 18th. We've got another week to go. Vancouver comes to town, and that game is at 8 p.m. up at Toyota Stadium. Dan, I think you have some non-FC Dallas news. Well, actually, first, before we get to Dan, I noticed the other day, Buzz, that Colorado, I think I saw somebody tweet out that Colorado rolled out essentially their senior team for their Colorado's 2 game, like in USL 1 or MLS Next or whatever they're playing in.
Yeah, Next Pro. They basically played their first team without the guys that have been called up, essentially. So it's a really smart idea. And it made me think, of course, that with 2 weekends without a game, that's a long run in the middle of your season with no, not just fitness, not just game fitness, but sharpness, form, touch, all that stuff. That's a long time without playing a competitive game. You can play a scrimmage, inter-squad scrimmage, and I'm sure they've done that, but that's not the same as that. So it occurs to me that North Texas plays this weekend, and it's Colorado did it, and I think it's very likely, and I haven't gone to practice because I'm out of town, but I think it's very likely that you might see some FC Dallas guys playing for North Texas this weekend, and maybe not Hedges, but guys that are certainly in competition, guys that maybe you felt like need a run out to stay consistent, or guys you're trying to work back in. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see maybe not an entire 11, but pretty close to a good chunk of that team might be FC Dallas guys. I'm speaking purely speculatively here, just based on what I know about how coaches think in terms of competition being different than training. And when I saw Colorado did it, I was just like, oh man, that's a really great idea. I'll be surprised if everybody doesn't do that.
Who does North Texas have next? Do you know?
Timbers 2.
There you go. I don't even remember.
Who?
Timbers
2.
Yeah. Oh, Timbers 2. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Keep in mind, MLS Next is terrible. So, but there is a value. Like Colorado played St. Louis 2, and that's their first team now effectively. I mean, it's not 100% an MLS team, but it's a good team. It's as good as North Texas. Timbers, I think, is pretty good too. So even if the Timbers don't roll out a good team, it still is a better, more, because like if you play against the next pro team, they're going to come out guns blazing against an MLS guys. That's going to be some intense competition. That's way better than you're going to get in training. So I think it's a really good idea, and I think there's a good chance you'll see it against in that game.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So if North Texas this weekend rolls out ostensibly a starting 11 of senior team players, is Nico the coach or is Pod McCaw the coach?
No, Pod McCaw would be.
All right.
Yeah, you would keep Pod
That's
down
weird.
there. Well, Nico will probably be sitting in the stands, and I'm sure he'll tell him who to play. But
and he's not going to go see Top Gun or
no. I mean, he might.
The dinosaur movie
afterwards.
Okay.
But I'm assuming Pod. I mean, look, there's enough integration between those staffs that they would know, how to use them and what to do anyway.
Sure.
So and he would give them the lineup. I'm sure it's like, here's who you're playing and where you're playing them, but here's how long you're playing them. I'm sure you would see a whole bunch of them as much as you could sub out, at 60 minutes or so. But go see North Texas this weekend, and you might see a lot of MLS dudes.
All right, let's downshift here for a second. Dan, why don't you tell everybody about the great Denton Diablo story?
Denton Diablos, our local NPSL champions. They got the invite to play in the Hank Steinbrecher Cup in Flint this past week. The champion of champions for all of amateur soccer in the United States, effectively. Sounds like they had a hell of a journey. Our good friend Damon Gochner, the owner, his flight got cancelled both ways, so he had to drive to Flint.
Did it have anything to do with his beard?
No. Apparently, you can't take off your beard for TSA. They went there. They played Lansdowne Yonkers, one of the constant.
What a great name!
Presences and what they're one of the constant presences in the US Open Cup. They beat them 4-1. I can't remember who it was, but one of the players got a second half hat trick after subbing on. Unfortunately, they lost the final to Flint City Bucks, who win that cup for the fourth successive time now.
Wow.
I watched some of the game. Denton were absolutely dominant in the first half. Brian Padilla hit the crossbar. He should have had another. They looked absolutely phenomenal going forward. They really shut them down. Flint came out second half pretty hot, got 2 quick goals, and then Denton got a late consolation from the penalty spot, but not enough quite to turn it around. They are apparently they didn't lose any momentum in the league because they won last night against Coyotes FC with Padilla scoring 5 goals. So
wow. Why do I know that name, Buzz?
Well, Brian Padilla is a former FC Dallas Academy kid. He's slightly behind Paxton and Jesus. He was in the same team with Thomas. He went to Maryland. Unfortunately, he's had two pretty big major injuries at Maryland, so he's medical redshirted twice. So he's still actually eligible, which is incredible. I think he's going to play one final season this fall. I think he is, because he wasn't in the draft pool this last year. So the reason he's interesting is because he's technically a homegrown eligible player as long as he's done his required stuff, which I imagine he has, because he's a highly, highly, highly regarded talent. At one point, he was regarded just about as good as Paxton and Jesus, and chose to go the college route. I don't know if Dallas ever went after him as a homegrown. For me, he was just a tiny tick, not quite as good as Paxton, but he's really, really good. He's a difference-making kind of player, scores big goals, and he's kind of a he's not a winger or a 10. He would have the same problem a lot of guys do now is where you play him. Yeah, he's kind of an off-striker, false wing or something like that. He's a lot like Jesus. That's a really good description. So off-striker in the old days. But a guy that people like us have assumed for years was going to be a pro, and the injuries have been a big worry. So seeing a guy like that score 5 goals is really exciting because he's an FC Dallas guy. So that might be really cool. Looking forward in the future.
All right. Well, congratulations to Denton Diablos and Damon. That's a cool story. They continue to do very well and make everybody around here really proud. Cool little club they got going on up there. Okay. Anything else, fellas, that we need to touch on or discuss or chat about here?
Got another.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, I got another local youth prospect that seems to have recycled or resurfaced. Remember Bailey Sparks at
I do.
At Solar, the kid that FC Dallas could never quite get, and then he signed an academy deal at Sporting Kansas City as a fast track into the USL team.
Yeah, matter of fact, Kansas City wanted to sign him, and Dallas homegrown territory team and blocked it.
So he's playing for Texas United in USL League 2. Since he left Kansas City and went to SMU, so now he's playing at Parish Episcopal right next to Green Hill, that famous proving ground of so many Dallas players.
I'm gonna go so far as to call that a tragic situation because that kid is legit pro talented. He has no business playing in college. That's a guy that needed to go straight from, academy or US. He was playing for effectively North Texas is the Sporting's version of that. Their 2 team on an academy contract. He needs to be playing in a pro environment. There's no reason that kid should be at SMU.
How old is he?
I mean, he's probably 19, just out of high school.
So does Dallas just not have any eyes for him, or is he kind of like that? He doesn't want to play for them.
He's Kappas. He never played for FC Dallas, so he's not eligible to a homegrown contract. But he's from their homegrown territory, so nobody else can sign him to a homegrown contract. Like he wouldn't play for Sporting for a year in their academy. So that made him, quote, eligible for homegrown for them, except that he's a Dallas territory guy. So he was automatically blocked from signing one of them, just like Kappas was with Dallas. So this territory rule, it's stupid because Bailey Sparks doesn't want to play for FC Dallas. That's fine. That's his prerogative. He wanted to play for somebody else. He should have been able to, but he can't. And it's a loss for him that he's playing in college because he's way too talented for that. He doesn't even start for SMU, because they're not interested in necessarily his professional development. They're interested in winning college soccer games, right? I mean, he played I think he started maybe 6 or 7, maybe, Dan. I don't even look. But it's stupid.
Don't even know.
It's stupid that he's playing college ball and not playing professional ball. It's ridiculous.
Well, wait a second. That doesn't make any sense to me. If he's such a superstar in the making and a pro and a pro level talent, why would he not be starting at the collegiate level, game in and game out?
Because a freshman creative baller kind of kid is not necessarily good enough to start for a college soccer team when you're playing against an 18-year-old kid against a 22-year-old kid who are playing a bigger, physical, more direct kind of game when he's a ball-handling, nifty player. Now, he's tall, but he's really lanky and not really very strong. He's got real great ball skill. He needs to be playing in a professional development team, training with professionals, being coached by professionals. He needs to be playing for North Texas or Sporting Kansas City 2 or whatever.
He could do the Gojo route, right?
He could have. Yeah, he could have.
Jogo. Yeah,
he could have, but he didn't. I mean, I think once he couldn't sign with Sporting, I think he was like, okay, I'll go to SMU. That'll be fine, I guess. I don't, I'm not privy to why he made the decision he made to go to SMU. Maybe there wasn't a team. I think this is crazy, but maybe there's not a USL team that thought he was good enough. I don't find that likely to be true because the kid's legit awesome. He's one of the best players to ever come out of Solar. I thought it was such a tragedy he never wanted to play for FC Dallas and they could never get him to come over. But he's a great player with a big upside. He needs to be in a developmental environment. Maybe he's not ready to play for FC Dallas or something like that, or Sporting. Sporting would have been playing him, like a homegrown. They would have developed him like you do, but.
Hopefully, playing for Texas United and USL League 2 will be that kind of shop window for League 1 and Championship teams because, like I say, he's losing 4 years to college, or maybe he just does maybe he just goes until the next draft, does his eligibility and can and that's it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of weird crap happening these days with rules, and maybe there's some way he can get an opportunity somewhere. The kid is super, super talented. I really want to see him get a chance at a higher level than. And listen, no offense to SMU, but that's not where you go anymore to develop your high-level pro game. You want a homegrown deal. You want to be one of these 18-year-old kids that's playing for North Texas, right? That's what you want. You don't want to be playing for SMU. No offense to SMU. There are guys that are late bloomers that don't come out of academy systems, but he came from a much better system than that. He was already playing for Sporting's developmental team. He's taken a step backwards to go to SMU, and it's a shame.
All right. I think we've done enough for this off
I got
week.
one more.
Oh, good Lord.
Sorry. Well, Tariek Scott, who is one of the top-tier players on my FC Dallas Academy homegrown wish list. He's currently a U17, but he plays for the 19s mostly. He's the one who has been with North Texas a fair bit. He scored a brace in their first game when he came off the bench. Apparently, he's in this Bayern Munich World Team thing today. They tweeted out a team photo yesterday, and he's in it. So he's off with Bayern Munich doing that, whatever that reality thing. I don't know a lot of details about it, but what a cool opportunity for a kid who's, 16, 17 right now.
Doesn't he have a twin brother with him?
No, not twin brother. His older brother, Malik Henry Scott, plays for Tulsa. He's a very, very quick, talented player in college, a guy who may be one of these late bloomers that you look at down the line. But Tariek is bigger and more polished and is a higher level prospect in my mind. For me, he's high on the homegrown list, not a guy I want to see go to college by any means. Super cool that he's in this Bayern thing. I don't know what it means in terms of like what that level is. I've never watched the show, so I don't know that about it. But what an opportunity, even if it's just like for the summer. How cool is that, man, that he's getting that opportunity? I think it's terrific.
Yeah, that looked. What's the other? Who's the last Dallas player that played on that world team, Bayern world team?
I don't know that any Dallas player has played. North Texas has that kid that came through that, Mulatto, who plays for North Texas now, came through that and is here through that relationship.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Dallas has sent guys to Bayern before to train with their 19s and their 23s and stuff. This is different. This is like this summer. I think it's kind of a reality show. I think he plays some games and stuff. I should have looked into it more, but and I will now. Obviously, he's not. No, he's in the team, but man, whatever it is, it's super cool that he's got an invite. That somebody thought well enough of him to take him over there to this competition. He's part of this team. They're going to play some games over the course of this summer. How cool is that for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid, whatever he is? They're in the playoffs right now. I think they may have missed the playoffs. I think. No, the 19s made it. Yeah, they're in. So whatever. Who cares about that? He's off in Germany. That's awesome.
Hey, this is Graham, reminding you to shop soccer90.com for all your FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club jerseys, tees, and scarves. Beginning today, all FC Dallas jerseys are eligible for the Third Degree Podcast listener discount. So when checking out on soccer90.com, be sure to use the promo code Third Degree, and you'll receive 20% off your entire order. Soccer90. Live it, love it, wear it. Up the Mariners.
All right. Very good. Dan, thank you for your time tonight. Good content as always, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Have you trimmed the beard since I saw you last? Speaking of beards.
It needs a bit of a trim.
Okay. All right. And Buzz, I know you're enjoying your time off, but I think I can speak for, I don't mean to speak for Dan, but I'm going to speak for Dan, and I'm going to speak for all of your fans and readers and listeners to this pod, and sending us our love and compassion to you and your family in what probably has been a pretty tough 2 or 3 weeks for you. And just know that we're here for you, and we love you very much.
Oh, thank you. It has been a tough couple weeks, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, FC Dallas Curious fan, we do love and adore you as well, too. We will speak to you next week, again, without any games to talk about, on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
When is soccer back?
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.